While browsing around on Steam, looking through reviews, and hearing from word of mouth is always going to be a good thing as far as trying to find a brand new visual novel to read. For me, I think one thing that is maybe like less talked about and maybe is like a deciding factor for me as far as really pushing me to go ahead and like become interested in a visual novel and want to start one is through watching an OP for a visual novel. Now, not all VNs have OPs, but I feel like for a lot of VNs that I've been purposely trying to like find nowadays, I'll go ahead, discover something, and then one of like the main things I want to do is to go ahead and see, hey, can I pull up the OP, see exactly what is it about? Because I feel like an OP can really like help set the vibes, introduce you to like the world and the characters very briefly, as well as with like the music, kind of give you a baseline for maybe what you can expect as far as the quality from the visual novel. And I think all of those aspects, when you put them together, helps to kind of give you like a good picture. And I guess in a way, it's kind of like a judging a book by its cover kind of deal. But at the same time, I think it's like very helpful and is something that like maybe not too many people really consider or like take for granted. So today I kind of want to talk about some examples of visual novel OPs specifically for untranslated VNs, because I feel like a lot of the times when I'm finding these like super like niche untranslated VNs that hardly anyone is talking about, at least over here in like the English speaking side of the community, the way I kind of find these non-translated visual novels is through just randomly stumbling upon a VN OP that has been uploaded to YouTube, going down and scrolling through the comments and seeing like what is maybe some of the comments as far as like people maybe reminiscing over the visual novel, giving their general thoughts. And I think is a pretty like solid way to find VNs, and hopefully ones that you would actually want to read. So let's get into it. When talking about non-translative visual novels, what's one anyone, not even having read, everyone can kind of think to as far as something that is not translated, but the OP is really good and everyone is aware of, maybe in part due to the OP? If you guessed Sakura no Uta, you would be correct. Because I think Sakura no Uta is one of those like last few visual novels that everyone wants to read. And maybe the reason why people want to read it maybe isn't even in part due to the fact that there is like good word of mouth around Sakura no Uta and that a lot of people talk about it quite positively as far as story. The fact that there's like a pretty popular writer behind it. I think in a lot of ways, maybe like just one of the big reasons why people know about Sakura no Uta and are sold on the fact that it's going to be a really good experience is because of the fact that they've heard the OP and see like all the graphics, see the like the overall quality of the song and think, whoa, this is going to be something that is very thrilling to read. And I think too, it's kind of like sold even more by the fact that with the 10th anniversary version of Sakura no Uta, they ended up updating the OP even more to like really lean into the aspects of like what's the story about now. Like they show all the like different artistic expression of all the paintbrushes and stuff like that, to where I think people that listen into Sakura no Uta's OP are very much sold on the thought that when this visual novel finally comes around to being translated, it's going to be something that is going to be absolutely amazing and it's going to be a great time to read. Another visual novel that I think is kind of along that same track, which maybe is considered like a sort of quote-unquote Sakura no Uta at home. I'm blanking on the name right now, but I'll go ahead and show it. I've had it wish listed on Steam for forever now, and kind of has like a similar vibe as far as like Sakura no Uta's OP, in that it has like a lot of the like sakura tree or like cherry blossom trees shown prevalently throughout the story, kind of like in a way close to Sakura no Uta where it's like about the drawing. This visual novel that I'm talking about has like, I guess it's quite like focused around music, so they have a lot of emphasis on like a piano within the OP. And from what I recall, a while back there was like a video that I had stumbled upon for like a top 100 like OP rankings that I guess like maybe the JP visual novel community did quite some time back, and I think this was like a top 10. So even though like this is a visual novel that I still think like people don't really talk about, I think people like really rank it quite highly, and maybe a lot of people dive into that visual novel specifically because they watched the OP and was like quite blown away with all of the different like aspects as far as like the quality, how good the song is, all the artwork, etc., to where people heard it and was like, well, this is gonna be quite cool. Now, my next example is going to be something that is kind of like lighthearted and kind of just like sets the tone. It's a VN that I covered on the channel quite some time back by the name of Lamune. And Lamune, I actually didn't end up discovering through the OP. I had actually listened to the ending theme first, but when I got into Lamune and I was reading it, I got to the OP and I was quite blown away with like how fun and quirky it is. So Lamune's OP has this very like kind of, I guess, tropical-esque vibe to the song that plays throughout its OP. It's very much fits in line with what you would expect as far as Lamune being a like story set within the summertime. It has this very like kind of like fun and enjoyable summer experience vibe that you get from reading Lamune. And I think too, what really stood out to me is that Lamune's OP, at the start, you'll see two chibi characters for two of the like main heroines, and they'll pop on the screen and then drop down to the bottom corner of the screen and then just proceed to dance and play instruments in rhythm to the OP. And I think it's something that's just like really quirky and really fun. And what's helped too is that like style for using the chibi characters has actually been carried across to Lamune's sequel and also to a sister game that it had as well that's like set in the same universe as Lamune, to where all three of those OPs use the same kind of like, I guess, gimmick, to where they have the main characters dancing on screen in rhythm to the music. I think it's just something that's like really fun and kind of sets you up for like, oh, this is going to be a really fun experience to read because of like how they're really going all out when it comes to like making something that's you're only going to see for like a minute or two, but really sits with you, to where even now I'm like thinking, oh yeah, Lamune's OP I think is one of the more fun examples of a visual novel OP that I've seen personally. Now, as far as like the emotional side, one OP that I think really kind of like hit home and made like really encouraged me to go ahead and actually finally dive into reading it a while back was My Tetsu Last Run, to where I had read the translated version of My Tetsu, and I think in a way, the people that made My Tetsu, I would consider are maybe like the king of visual novel OPs, because when you think about like within anime, yes, every single anime season has its own dedicated OP. A visual novel a lot of the times is only going to have a singular one, and My Tetsu is different in that every single like heavier or like more weighted character route within the story of My Tetsu has its own dedicated OP. So as you're reading every single character route, you almost get this like kind of, I don't know, it's like a different vibe, to where you feel like you're embarking on this like cool journey every single time that you go ahead and dive into a brand new character route. And My Tetsu Last Run, I think kind of like really sold me with the OP for Paulette's After Story, to where if you think about like after stories, Clannad After Story doesn't have its own dedicated OP within the actual like source material, the visual novel, but the anime does. Looking at the OP for Paulette's After Story kind of gave me like the vibe of like what would a Clannad After Story look like, to where it like puts a heavy emphasis on maybe like a more like somber, quieted down kind of tone, where it's like very emotional. Watching that OP almost kind of gives you this vibe of like, okay, well, it is kind of like more toned down, you've settled down, you've conquered whatever like hurdle was in the main route, and then going into After Story you get to see the introduction of like the main character and the main heroine's child, and you get to kind of like, I don't know, it's a different vibe, and was something that vibe really pushed me to go ahead and be like, okay, yeah, you know what, I'm going to read My Tetsu Last Run despite the fact that I don't know how to read Japanese, but I really wanted to dive in and experience that story, whether it was going to be harder on me or not. And then for a final example, I want to talk about a visual novel that I am currently reading right now by the name of Cosmos no Sora ni. This VN is quite interesting because I'll talk on it a lot more when I get around to my review of it once I have finished reading it. But Cosmos no Sora ni is kind of like a, I don't know, I guess I would say is like a bare bones experience in a way. It's not like a really like grandiose experience. There's like no voice acting. All the like music in Cosmos no Sora ni only plays like for a single time, and then it doesn't loop at all. Some of the times while you're reading it, you'll have these like awkward pauses to where you'll be reading through a scene and you have no music playing in the background because like the song that is playing was maybe a little too short for the scene in question. But the thing is, like, I feel like that kind of carries across to the OP as well. The reason why I wanted to dive into Cosmos No Sovereignty is because I stumbled across the OP for it and was like really drawn in with the overall vibe that I got from watching it. It kind of appears at the surface as like something that is kind of, generic. It shows like some little quote from the character as they're introducing all the characters and kind of looks like you're almost stereotypical VN. But at the same time, I think the music is kind of a vibe. It's just like very mellow beat that I ended up being like drawn to. But the thing is, once we get around to the halfway point of the OP, we've finished flicking through all of the different characters and kind of like showing off what you might expect. But then you get hit with a singular image that just stays on the screen for that last half of the OP that I think actually really was like what drew me in even more and sealed the deal for me for wanting to actually check out Cosmos No Sovereignty and see what the story was going to be about. Because as that singular image pops onto screen, you have a character that's kind of like balled up. It kind of gives you this almost like melancholic feel. The lyrics are still playing at that point, but then as the lyrics start to fade, you then go back into that, like I said, where it's like a very mellow beat, and that mellow beat just gradually plays for like maybe like a solid, maybe close to like a minute, and you're really allowed to just kind of like stare at this one singular image and kind of take in all of the like the feeling that is like shown within that one singular image. To where looking at it, I was like really sold on the fact that like, okay, when I looked up the information on the game on BNDB afterward and was able to see, oh, this is apparently a Nakage, something that is going to be more emotional, I was quite interested. And yes, I'm about like halfway into Cosmos No Sovereignty right now, and I do think the vibes that I got through the OP were able to make it across to the actual story as well, to where I've been reading it and there has been moments where it's been quite emotional. But this has been a kind of a weird topic, I think, because instead of doing the stereotypical like my top 5 visual novel OPs or top 10 or whatever, figured I wanted to talk about maybe like the purpose of a VN OP, and that like, when I watch an OP, that's like a pretty big like deciding factor for what VN I would actually want to go ahead and read, putting a VN on my radar to where I would want to read it at some point. But those have been my thoughts on the importance of visual novel OPs. I've been Wave. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.